Welcome back to another episode of the Strive for 25 podcast. And I've got an amazing guest on today, Chad Hufford with Veritas Wealth Management. And I love this conversation we're going to have because markets are kind of all over the place and products, tools, resources. It doesn't mean squat unless you know what the hell you're doing. Don't have the right mindset on how to be able to be responsible in utilizing some of these tools. So, Chad, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
My pleasure, Joel. It's an honor to be here.
So you've got, a lot going on, right? You got a family, kids, just released a book. What are some of the things that you're focused on right now in terms of educating clients right here, right now with where markets are? What's something that's top of mind?
Well, I think education is important, but really it's changing behavior that's even greater than that. And I think if you look at education as a transference of knowledge, I think coaching is the application and execution of that knowledge. So that's what we're really pushing on right now, is making sure that people are still executing their plan, they're applying the knowledge they have. So it's really coaching our clients to stick with their current strategy, unless their goals have changed. Rarely does your portfolio need to change, making sure their plans are still in line with what they're trying to accomplish long term, and that they're executing relentlessly the path ahead.
What's one of the biggest things that you've seen people start to go kind of the wrong path in terms of mindset, or wanting to kind of go down the wrong path? What are some of the examples of that you're seeing people kind of get freaked out about, or just mindset?
Well, I think a lot of people don't really have a clear objective for what they're trying to accomplish long term. In fact, I got a referral today and I was talking to him, a really nice guy, but he's so focused on the different tactics and strategies, the different pathways he's trying to take, and is very reactionary. And he doesn't really have a clear idea of what his goals are long term, what financial independence even looks like for him, how much money that he's going to need to be able to be comfortable without a paycheck. Like, those are the things that people need to get really clear on. Your money, your investments, they're just a tool. And unless you know what you're trying to build with your tool, it's really easy to be reactionary. It's really easy to panic. It's really easy to misbehave with really good tools if you don't have some greater purpose that you're working towards and really clear objectives. Otherwise, people are just wandering around collecting investments, not really strategically investing.
So this example that you mentioned, kind of where are they along the way in their journey? You can give an age range maybe, or, what were some of the things that are top of mind with that conversation?
So he's about 3 years away from retirement, has a great pension, quite a bit of money invested, but there's so many variables and unknowns. He doesn't really have a clear picture of what he's trying to accomplish, which is fine. That's where a lot of people are when they come to us. They don't know how much money they're going to need. They don't know what their emphasis should be over the next 3 years. Is it add more to retirement? Is it pay off debt? Should I change my investment strategy? It's all these potential pathways. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I take this road or that road? Those are good questions, but we have to look at those questions through the lens of, what does a win look like? Where do you want to be in 3 years when you walk away from your job? Where do you want to be living? How much income do you want to have? Who do you want to be? Where do you want to be? And what do you want to be doing when you have a work optional lifestyle? And too many people are focused on what they're retiring from, not what they're retiring to. And they lack that clear objective. So again, they're not really strategically building. They're just kind of collecting materials. They're just collecting investments. They have, some mutual funds over here. Maybe they bought a duplex over there. They've got a 401k, but there really isn't a collective strategy. There's not an overarching theme to their investing process, pointing everything at an objective of financial freedom. They just know they want to retire someday. Maybe they have a timeline, but they don't really have any way to measure success along that journey.
Yeah, I mean, not retiring from, but retiring to, and putting, more clarity on that. I love how you phrase that. And, do you have an example maybe of somebody that's kind of over time help them kind of be crystal clear of what that retiring to looks like, and how you guys frame it or talk about it? I mean, how do you describe what that could look like?
Well, one of the things that I ask people every day, and I just asked this gentleman today, is, let's fast forward 3 years. Where are you? What are you doing? What challenges you? What wakes you up in the morning? And what is your meaningful pursuit? Because I believe everybody needs to have that. And it can't just be meaningful. It has to be, when I say pursuit, I mean, something that challenges you, something that stretches you, because the types of people that we work with, Joel, are the worst type of people to sit around in retirement and do nothing. To wake up every morning, watch television and do the morning crossword puzzle and whatever. Like, this is not about existing. We want people to thrive in their retirement years. And that's why we even started using different terminology. We call it a work optional lifestyle, because it doesn't necessarily even mean that you stop working. We've had some people that I'll give you a very specific example. So we had a couple, one worked for a radio station, and the wife worked for a radio station, the husband worked for an energy company. And they basically went into full-time self-supported ministry. And their goal was to get to a point where they wouldn't need to raise money. They wanted to go into missions work and really supporting other missionaries, and to use the skill sets they already had to be able to do that. But they didn't want to have to ask for support. They didn't want to have to do fundraising and things like that. So they're still working. They're still super engaged. They just don't need a paycheck because their investments now produce the paycheck for them. That's just one example. We've had some people switch careers, and we do have some people that aren't as quote unquote productive, maybe from the outside looking in, but they're spending more time with their grandkids. They're coaching a football team for their grandson or their granddaughter. They're volunteering in the church, but they're doing something that matters, something that challenges them and that checks boxes, and that also keeps them engaged. Because another thing that we see that people lack when they move on from their careers is they unplug from that community. There's camaraderie there. It's not that you like everybody, but there's hopefully a common theme, a common mission that you're working to in your career. And then you unplug from that. Unless you plug it into something over here in your post-work, your work optional lifestyle, people experience a lot of frustration, a lot of loneliness. So it's helping people really frame what they want their life to look like, then attaching some financial goals around it, then reverse engineering that process.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I know just me personally, I mean, I'm in the middle of my journey, I guess you'd say. I just turned 40 this year. I just know that when I've got a mission, when I've got a goal, when I'm working towards that, I'm happier than when I'm sitting idle or don't have that kind of passionate mission that I'm working on, whether it be family or friends or job or whatever. So I definitely am on the same page. I guess one quick question for you in terms of time and lifetime projections. What are some of your guys' models kind of mapping out for people that are, younger in the earlier half of their journey? Of what type of average time spans are you guys, kind of including in your projections in terms of average age,
Well, we actually try to get people to shoot aggressively, to plan for a work optional date that's as early as reasonable. So, if somebody's 35 years old, unless they really want a 30, 40-year timeline, we don't need to wait to have their target set at 65 years old. If they're starting early enough, they might be able to have a work optional lifestyle at 55, maybe 50. Doesn't mean they necessarily retire at that time, but we try to get people to plan aggressively. Because if we set a really lofty goal and we miss it, we're still ending up in a pretty good spot. So maybe they didn't hit their work optional lifestyle at 50 like they wanted to. Maybe it's 53. That's still amazing. Maybe it's not 55, maybe it's 57. Maybe they didn't pay their house off at 45 like they wanted to. They paid it off at 43. But they're still so far ahead of where most people are. The types of folks that we work with they're more goal focused, they're more ambitious, they're more driven typically. And if we have clear, measurable, and meaningful goals, we've just found that if we can create a roadmap, a financial blueprint that connects somebody's long-term goal to where they are right now and a pathway in between, they'll figure out how to get it done. They'll figure out how to make those numbers work, even if it's going to be a challenge. But what a lot of people lack is a clear objective and measurable steps to get there. And when you have a goal, let's go back to that 35-year-old couple. Let's say they are, 25 years away from retirement. It's really hard to stay engaged when everything you're doing is for your 60-year-old self. So what a blueprint does, what a financial roadmap does, Joel, is it helps bring that 60-year-old person into the present. And it lets people know, here's what I need to accomplish this month in the next 30 days to stay on track for the goal. So they can celebrate some of those milestones along the way. It isn't just, hey, I'm paying my 60-year-old self right now. No, it's I'm creating some wins for me right now. And they can attach their sacrifice in the moment for the payoff in the future.
That's awesome. Yeah, having those little bitty wins, yeah, it's easy to do, but it's also easy not to do, you know. But they do stack up, and it matters in terms of the subconscious brain and how the mind, keeps on going and battling towards the future. You mentioned a couple of the different kind of niches of clients that are super goal oriented and out there doing stuff. Can you share a little bit about kind of the background of some of the type of clientele you work with and kind of that network?
Well, we've been affiliated with Dave Ramsey for a few years now. So we work with a lot of his folks, a lot of his listeners all across the United States. And they come from all different walks of life. But, there's a certain mindset that I think Dave Ramsey has a tendency to attract. So we work with a lot of those folks. And we work with a lot of oil and gas professionals, both in the field and in engineers. I'm here in Alaska, so oil and gas is huge. So I think that was a part of that niche getting started, just having such a large population base relative to our overall population, a large relative population base here in Alaska. But also, these are folks that they work in very difficult environments. So here on the North Slope in Alaska, they're literally above the Arctic Circle. I mean, this is like Santa Claus and reindeer land, it's 40, 50 below sometimes in the winter. Like they go through periods where the sun barely even rises for weeks at a time. They're working away from family. They're in a stressful, very volatile industry. So there's just a tendency for that type of person to be wired a certain way. They're more willing to pay a price today for a payoff in the future. And that's not to say that we can't find those people in other industries. It's just that's where we've seen a lot of them, because the difficulties and the frustrations that folks in the oil and gas profession face, they're the same that everybody faces, but they're magnified. Again, you're trying to budget, but for 2 weeks, you're working 80 hours a week, and then you're home, you're off for 2 weeks. You got nothing but time to spend money and get yourself on trouble and Amazon and things like that. So it's almost like you have two different lives. It's hard enough for somebody whose life is consistent every day to stay on a budget. But when you have two completely different lifestyles and schedules, it's even harder. And that's just one small example. So we've just found that the oil and gas industry provides some unique opportunities to really meet those challenges head on, but also to learn about how everybody thinks and deals with investments. And another niche that is similar would be law enforcement and fire departments. The first responders. There's unique difficulties and challenges that those people face. And that's not a job you want to be doing forever. So you don't want a 65-year-old cop showing up to your door if there's a break in the middle of the night, So we want to be able to give these people the opportunity to be able to pivot early in life and not have to work that career for, probably more than 20, 25 years max. So those are fresh and interesting challenges. But it's made that really cool, Joel, is we've taken some of what we've learned in those spaces and applied it to people that maybe don't have quite as much stress. Maybe they don't have quite the burnout rate, but still being able to get them to a work optional life relatively early in life.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we kind of dig into on this channel is the human body is built to conserve energy, right? Going back how many thousands of years. And so, when you have challenges and you have stresses and you have that kind of crazy work-life balance, like you don't want to be doing that job for 40 years. You want to do it, work hard, build something to get you out of it, at some point in the future, versus somebody who, like you mentioned, that maybe not in as a stressful situation in terms of the job. And maybe they get stuck into a comfort level, a comfort balance and, comfort zone, and aren't kind of in that mode of trying to be able to continue to stack and build to be able to get out early. And that's okay. Not everybody has that type of vision or goal to retire early, like you said before, with et cetera. Jesus Christ. Jazz, you can cut that out. My goodness. So that comfort zone piece of it, you map out these visions, these goals, and either people buy in or they don't. Kind of the old saying, hey, you can bring a horse to water, you can't make a drink. So how do you guys navigate those conversations with people that maybe, hey, you've got this opportunity to be able to get ahead, but you're kind of just stuck?
Well, it's kind of looking at those things, Joel, and saying, here's where you say you want to be. Is that accurate? and getting some buy-in, getting some agreement, saying this is where you're at right now. Here's what the commitments need to look like to get to where you say you want to be. Are you willing to pay that price? Are you willing to make those sacrifices? Are you willing to execute the steps that you need to move you along the path? And some people aren't. Some people are looking for miracles. They want a amazing lifestyle up here in the stars, but they want to do the bare minimum work. Like we do get people that ask the question, not in so many words, but essentially what they're saying is, Chad, what's the bare minimum that I can do and still be wildly wealthy? Like, that's the wrong question, you know? And here's the other thing too. It's not just about you've got to retire at 55 years old or something, but it's about financial independence. It's about getting to a place where you no longer need your paycheck. And I'm not in a hurry to get people to retire necessarily. For a lot of people, they need, like we talked about earlier, they need that community. They need that engagement. They don't have maybe anything out there that's more fulfilling than the job they're doing right now. But to be able to go to work every day and not need the paycheck, that's amazing. To be able to deal with the stresses that your job provides and realize if it got really bad, you don't have to show up next week. There's so much freedom in that. And you make better decisions because you're automatically thinking more long-term. You're not worried about the short term because you've got a get out of jail free card if you need it. The stress and the difficulty of your job will just roll off your shoulders. It doesn't mean every day is easy. It doesn't mean it's Disneyland, but the challenges you face when you have financial independence, or if you're on a clear path to financial independence, the challenge you face are diminished. They don't feel as heavy when you're experiencing that type of freedom.
So kind of this mission, this vision, this goal, buying into it, and then kind of working backwards. And, you know, when you have that vision, that goal that you're bought into, and you're focused on that, some of the BS that you deal with along the way, like you mentioned, kind of rolls off your shoulders and doesn't, you know, stick with you to hold you down. So having that vision, that goal. So let's say you've got somebody that's on the same kind of plane or wavelength of what we're talking about here. And, you know, we're talking about just pure numbers, right? Income minus expenses equals your savings. You have enough savings, then you can invest. You can invest over time, you know, your money will compound and build and then work towards financial independence. So if you got somebody that's making an average wage and, you know, not putting enough money away and they've, you know, got basic expenses, there's not really much to cut. Do you have any thoughts or examples of something that somebody has done or built up over time to be able to kind of attack that equation to be able to put more money away?
So I like what you just asked there, because I know that you guys your show's great encouraging people to shoot for that 25%, being able to save 25%, which means I've got to live off 75%. Well, actually means less because I've got to pay taxes along the way. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people out there living off of 110, 120% of what they make and using debt and credit cards to fund the difference. You're encouraging people, and we are as well, to go the opposite direction. Create margin, right? But margin often starts small. Very few people can listen to your show, Joel, and just be like, oh yeah, I can start saving 25%. It's like getting ready for a marathon. So you're talking about 25%, a marathon is 26.2 miles. Most people are not gonna be able to get out of bed in the morning and be like, yeah, I can do 26 miles. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 3, but they start training and they build the habits. And it does 2 things. First of all, it makes forward progress. You build momentum. Building wealth is an absolute momentum game. It's not about getting rich quick. It's about building wealth slowly. It's all about momentum. Momentum is driven by habits. So your habits have to start somewhere. It's okay if you start small, but you do have to start. You start with what you have, where you're at today. I believe somebody's financial future, their life trajectory can start today, this moment, if they decide to, but they have to be willing to make small, meaningful changes that compound over time. This doesn't mean for most people, they're going to be able to just step out and start saving 25% of their paycheck, but you can create the habit with 3%, with 5%, with 1%. Start saving. And too often we tell ourselves this lie that when I get the promotion, when I get this new job, when I finish my degree and I start this new career path, then I'm going to save. I can tell you it doesn't happen unless you start the habits with where you're at right now. And for the book I wrote recently, we interviewed people from all over the country working in oil and gas. We had people that are making $300,000-$400,000 a year living paycheck to paycheck because they always lived off everything they made. And they never started the habit of saving. They told themselves the lie that when they make more money, they will start saving. They gradually made more money. And just like a goldfish that slowly grows to the size of its enclosure, our spending habits without constraint will typically slowly grow to whatever size of income that we have. So we have to constrain it. We've got to put pressure on that goldfish to keep it smaller so there's margin. And then on the other side of that, Joel, we met people who have amazing financial habits, almost to a person. Those people started saving when they're relatively broke. It might have been when they were teenagers. It might have been when they were broke in college. It might have been when they were moving through the ranks as a contractor, working odd jobs here and there, trying to get on with one of the major oil companies. But they started saving when it was maybe $20 a paycheck or $50 a month or something like that. It was relatively insignificant. But what it did is it created a habit that they're the types of people that paid their future selves. And it was also a tangible reminder that they can do it. They can look back and say, yes, I'm the type of person who makes a short-term sacrifice for a long-term payoff. So I hope that answers your question. But those are the things that we need to do, is attach our current sacrifice to long-term benefit. That's why it's so important to get crystal clear about what we want. Now, what we want in the future can change. So just like if you're building a house, the house, the finished product, what you start building may not be what you end up building. You're going to make revisions along the way. That's okay. The point is you have a blueprint through the process that guides your saving and spending decisions so you can be proactive rather than reactive. And that blueprint, it connects your actions today, what you're building, for what that house is going to look like in the future. Because let's face it, Joel, like if you're sacrificing 25% of your income for the future, that is a sacrifice. Mm-hmm. But if you can look at that as paying your future self, now it's less of a cost and it feels more like an investment. So that's part of it, is the strong connection between you and your future. And the other part is the willingness to start small. No $1 makes you wealthy. No one push-up makes you fit. It's those small actions executed relentlessly over time. That's where the payoff comes from.
Yeah. Like on this channel, I've said many times that I hate the word discipline. Not that I don't think it's the right word to use. It's just that the word discipline typically gets thrown around and there isn't more context around it. You don't just wake up out of bed, like you said before. You don't wake out of bed saving 25% of your income or running 26 miles. You wake up and maybe it's 1 or 2 or 3% or whatever it is. Discipline, you don't just fall out of bed with discipline. It can be built, it can be strengthened, it can be worked on over time. And all the things you're talking about kind of fall in that same, like, building these building blocks, like, what we assign meaning to. You can have the same person. I love the example I heard a long time ago. The Olympic runner, they get butterflies just like you and I, and many of us maybe get that kind of paralyzing effect of, hey, I'm nervous or whatnot. And a lot of these athletes will have that same biological feeling, and they've trained their mind to think, okay, yeah, this is just my body telling me that I'm excited for this journey, excited for this race. And over a week or 2 or a month, et cetera, you started to retrain those neural pathways to turn it into a win instead of a negative, a positive instead of a negative. And I mean, all the things you're talking about, fall in that same wavelength. And I love that. From a standpoint of, saving money, right? And then increasing income is what we talk about too. Mm-hmm. And then talking about, this accountability part of it, how, almost coaching, right? Coaching, some people don't like to be in a coaching platform. I have coaches, some people like it, some people don't. But at the end of the day, most of the time it's the coach's job to ask the right questions. And the answers are typically within reach of the actual person, the coachee. And with some of the processes that you're mentioning before about asking the clients what their goals are and then kind of helping them kind of reverse engineer, the answers typically are within their reach to be able to get there. So this kind of goes back into your guys' process. Can you explain a little bit about the process of working with a client, onboarding, and how often do you guys touch base and connect, and the team and all that stuff?
So the first meeting is almost exclusively talking about what the vision is. Where do you want to be? Who do you want to become? And what do you want to be doing? What does financial independence mean to you? What does that look like? And find out what makes them tick, what's valuable. Because I can't tell you, Joel, what is deeply meaningful and fulfilling for you. I can help you figure that out. Then I can help you figure out how to attain it. but I can't tell you what's important to you. And if you looked at some of my life, you would say that's the sacrifice you make for those things. It's not worth it to me because we have different values. We have different desires. So the first part of the process is helping people figure out what the destination is, what they're trying to build, where they're headed. And then we try to get really clear of where they're at right now. What are they starting from? What are the obstacles? Is it debt? Is it a lack of income? Is it either going through a divorce? And the positives too. What have they saved so far? What is their employer match at their work? What do they have going for them? What do they have going against them? So if we get clear on where they are and we have somewhat of a vision for where they want to be, then we start creating the course in between. But it starts with those first two. Where are you? Where do you want to be? Just like if you had Google Maps, right? That's what's going to start with. Where do you want to end up? What is your current destination? And then it gives you the roadmap in between and gives you a timeline. And you can go a little faster, a little slower, but it routes you. So that's how our process starts. And then we look at what is their current investment strategy. Is it aligned with what they want to be doing? Is it aligned with where they want to be? And how much are they saving? Is that a realistic number based on the timeline and the goals that they have? Does that need to be adjusted? So that's where we really get into the process of that roadmap. The savings vehicles that they're using, the investment strategies, and the amount that they're feeding into those. Because again, like we talked about offline, you can have a great investment strategy, but if you're not feeding it, it doesn't matter, So that's what the next step of the process looks like. Usually it's the second meeting. It's going a little bit deeper into the details of what is their current process and what does their process need to be to connect those two dots from where they are to where they want to be. Then once they become clients, we remap their process, we remap their investment strategy, make sure that it's in alignment, and then start executing. So then that's where the coaching really comes into play, where we meet with them on at least an annual basis to realign the strategy. Have your goals changed? Have the obstacles in front of you changed? What have your wins looked like? What are you up against in this coming year? To see, do we need to realign the roadmap? Are they able to save more now that they've paid off some debt? Or maybe they had a medical issue and they've got to pay off some debt before they can start saving, whatever. But you look at the changes, and then it's constantly coaching the mindset. So whether it's sending them clips of podcasts like yours, producing some of our own content, I do a lot of speaking engagements, because Joel, you and I, we're up against a 24/7 news cycle of doom and gloom and misinformation. So it's not enough to just contact people every now and then, have a big meeting where we catch up and review their holistic strategy. I believe discipline, perseverance, optimism, they're like vitamin C. Our body can't store it. So we can't give people a big dose of it a couple of times a year. I think we need to give people small doses throughout the year on a constant daily, weekly basis to keep them on track, keep them executing. Because like we said earlier, the things that we're asking people to do are not easy. They require a lot of resilience. They require perseverance. So we have to make sure that we can get those little doses of those little injections of energy and motivation and even inspiration along the way. So that's why we're always trying to put content out there that's encouraging, empowering, and educational.
You mentioned the content and, speaking. When you're in front of a group of people, what are some of the most important things that you're trying to get across in that short period of time to connect with somebody? What's the main thing you're trying to be able to leave people with in those settings?
Obviously, different venues are looking for different topics and things like that. But I think the number one point I'm always trying to get across is personal agency, personal responsibility. You are the biggest variable in the success or failure of your life, your financial trajectory, your relationship, your business, whatever. Yes, things happen that are out of your control. But if you spend your life worrying about the things you can't control, you spend your life as a victim. And we need to make sure that we are focusing on what we can do to act on our plan, so we're not reacting to everybody else around us. So that's the number one thing, is personal agency, responsibility. What you do matters. Your habits, your behaviors, your actions, your choices. You are the biggest variable to your success in life.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you too, as we kind of gone down this path of talking about the business and how you guys do things and the why. And here you are out here spending your valuable time doing a podcast and other ones that you've been on, And there's a reason why we do this. I mean, we're trying to, put a message out there, help people, help people transform or get to a certain goal. But there's also a business reason around it too. And, again, this valuable time that you could be doing other things, and all this stuff adds up and compounds. But, how would you describe kind of the purpose and the why for putting up this content like this and the podcast for for the business?
Well, is to remind people that the very things that we've talked about, the willingness to start small, the having a plan. Even my folks that I've worked with for a long time, they still need to be reminded. In fact, I even think you said that recently on one of your shows, that they don't need to be educated, they need to be reminded.
Yep.
A lot of times we know what we already need to do, we just don't do it. Like telling people, oh yeah, you should pay off your truck that's costing $1,000 a month. Yeah, they probably already know that, but they don't do it. Or you should be increasing your 401k contribution, or you need to be starting something for your kids. Like we know what we need to do. And sometimes we don't. Like right now it's confusing. Stocks have been down for 2 years. Should I still be in stock funds? That can be really confusing. The way I'm looking at it is, well, you have an opportunity to buy the best companies in the world on sale, but you know what? That's not super clear. So that can get fuzzy, but a lot of times in life, not just in finances, Joel, we know what we are supposed to do. We just don't do it. That's where coaching comes in, to remind, to inspire, to encourage, and sometimes give somebody a kick in the pants that they need to do the right thing that they already know, but it's just pushing them along the way to be that sense or be that dose of discipline and inspiration. Because like you said, discipline, it can be like a dirty word. We don't like it. And sometimes my own discipline, my own willpower wears thin. That's where I need that dose to come in from external sources. So by doing this here with you today and the other shows I'm on, the speaking engagements, it provides that dose of encouragement and discipline and optimism when people's own willpower and optimism wear thin.
That's so true. And that's one of the things I also talk about too. It's like, you go to an inspiring event or hear an inspiring speaker and you get excited in the moment, okay, what happens tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next month, right? Like that energy, that excitement, it can fade away, if you don't have that kind of constant reminder or process to be able to kind of capture that excitement in the moment. Then you're just going over this cycle of ups and downs, and that consistency in the process and just continuing to do this and staying in front of your clientele and putting content out there, it matters, and I mentioned this a couple of days ago on social media. It's like, me personally, I started this podcast last year in September, and it's something I've been thinking about for a while. And I had this self-doubt, this thing thinking, like there's all these greats out there, the Stephen Covey's, the Tony Robbins, who are all these people that are out there doing it. Why isn't anybody going to listen to me? Why is anybody going to care what I have to say? And then I got to the point, and this is something I put out there too, that kind of this messaging kind of helped me get over my own shit, I should say. But Tim Grover, the trainer for Kobe and for Jordan, he talks about, the greats, they look at time differently than most. Most people, when they, have a deadline coming up, they count down to the deadline. 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh no, I got to half-ass this thing, get to the finish line. And the greats, they pick a goal or a vision, and they look at it from the flip side of that. I'm not going to stop till I get there. Day 1, day 50, day 200. I'm not stopping until that vision, that goal becomes a reality. So that started just kind of, fitting into my brain and just, kind of reframing the way I was looking at things. And finally, it just hit me. I'm like, there's 56% of Americans that don't have $1,000 in savings. So clearly the greats that are out there sending all these great messages out there, they haven't been able to connect with everybody. So maybe I do have something to provide to somebody and help and encourage or affect in a positive way. So then it becomes my job to go find the people that need my help. Not everybody's going to need my help. Not everyone's going to need your help, but it's our job to find the people that need our help and then affect them in a positive way. And so that's some of the things that, there's people out there, people that have reached out to me personally. Hey, thanks for that post. Like I was questioning myself. Now I'm going to go do the XYZ on my business or a side hustle or whatever it is they want to do. Like, it doesn't matter where you are in your journey. There's always an opportunity to be able to do the next thing, create, build, lift somebody else up. And it doesn't matter age, journey, experience. There's an opportunity for everybody to build something for yourself and help somebody else out there. Question for you in terms of the speaking stuff and podcasts. Is this something that you always wanted to do? or did it just come along the way and you just did it? What's your background on that?
No, it's something that's become necessary as we've scaled our business and as social media has grown and media in general. Like, I mean, again, I mentioned being up against this news cycle, right, of misinformation and doom and gloom. So people wake up in the morning. A lot of what do? They pick up their phone and they look at all the awful things that have happened in the world in the 8 hours since they fell asleep. And they're starting the day with a sense of scarcity, maybe anxiety, or maybe jealousy. They look at, their friends on social media, put their best foot forward, whatever it is. But we have much more of a challenge now to keep people from being distracted, to keep people focused on a long-term goal. And it also, the same technology that I think can pull people away from their goals and dreams is the same technology that we can utilize to inspire people and encourage them along the way. But we can't pretend that those things don't exist. So I think it requires a different level of engagement. And I think this is a great way to have one-to-many conversations that allow people to hear a message. And just like you said, not everybody's going to listen. Let's face it, not everybody actually wants what they say they want. Not everybody actually is willing to do the things necessary to get to where they say they want to go. But there's enough people out there that do. And the people that we're already working with have already proven to us they're committed. They want a better, more fulfilling, more free life for themselves. They're willing to do the hard work to get there, but they're going to need some encouragement along the way. And because these are universal principles, there's nothing that we've talked about today that doesn't apply to almost everybody, even if they're on different points of that journey. So those small steps for some people might be just starting their 401k at work and doing a 3% match. For somebody else, those small steps might be they've already maxed out their 401k, but now it's paying extra on the mortgage. Or who knows, maybe it's somebody, they're crushing it financially, but those small steps are gonna be like, you know what, I've traded my health for my wealth and I need to start working on my health again. So now that my financial plan is in order, I'm gonna start walking a mile a day. And I'm taking literal steps, but taking small steps in other areas of their life. But I think everything we've talked about today has such broad application. And people like you and I need to commit to continue to put those things out there because human beings are naturally short-term focused. We don't think about the long term, and we don't want to do the mundane kind of unsexy things. And I love that you mentioned Grover because he talks about Jordan and Kobe and the work that we all watched what they did in the arena when the lights were on. People had no idea how much work those guys put in dark gyms at 4:30 in the morning. That's what made them great. But everybody saw what happened on national television. That's what everybody celebrated. Nobody wants to do the work in the empty gym. Everybody wants the lights on, cameras flashing. They want to be celebrated. But it's a willingness to do the hard work. And that's what we're asking our clients to do. So we have to celebrate that with them. And I think that's what this is. Otherwise, we get focused on these events rather than all the work that goes into it. I'll just give you a quick metaphor. My wife and I met with our marriage coach this morning. And you think about it, like people spend way more time planning for a wedding than they do actually planning out their marriage. It's not about the wedding. It kicks off the marriage. But that's when the work starts, right? That's not a finish line, but people treat it like one where, okay, we're married now. I got the guy, I got the girl, whatever. And the rest just kind of takes care of itself. No, that's when the work starts, So that's why we have a coach that helps us work through that, helps us to gradually get better and improve on this process and continue to invest, because it wasn't 18 years ago when we said I do and exchange rings. It's every single day going forward. We have to have that mindset in our relationships, in our health, in our finances, and in every other area of life that's important. It's those little mundane things that we do every day. That's what matters.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of going in that direction of marriage and the mundane things, is there something that you've adopted or intentionally worked on that kind of fits in that mundane thing that just helped keep, the marriage in great standing in top-notch state?
Sure. So a couple things that I do every day. I write a gratitude list. And just every morning I write out a list of a few things I'm grateful for. Sometimes they're big things. Sometimes they're super small. Sometimes it's really insignificant, or it might seem insignificant. But what it does is it trains me to remind myself of all the blessings in my life. And it also trains me to look for those little things that we might not even notice. We might forget they even happened 2 or 3 days later, but I'm writing them down and I leave those out there for my family to see. My hope is that they start noticing all the wonderful things that happen to us, because the human tendency is to think of all the negatives. We don't remember all the nice things people said to us. We remember the jerk at the store that slammed the door in our face, or somebody at work who complained about the last email or something. It's always the negative. Like, that's what we have a tendency to focus on. So training our brains to work on being grateful, on focusing on the good in our life, and then sharing that with somebody you care about. Another thing that I try to do is just to leave a short note. And it might just be something as simple as, I'll be thinking of you today. Love you. See you tonight. But just to remind my wife, I'm thinking about her. I care about her. I'm praying for her. Maybe it's something really specific. Hey, I really appreciate the way that you did this thing the other day. And I'll be honest, like, there's some days where I don't have a lot of inspiration. There's some days where I don't feel like writing that note at all, because I'm upset, something happened, whatever. Maybe we had an argument right as I went out the door, but it forces me to do something that encourages her. And there isn't one note that makes a difference, right? No one note is going to change our marriage. But over the last 10 years, I've left thousands of those notes. I'd like to think that has a big cumulative effect.
That's awesome. Oh yeah. I love that. And like, in the worst mood, the worst day, whatever, and you still have the ability to then put something down because you're created that habit, right? If that can be your worst day, I mean, it's light years ahead of, the opposite. So,
well, if we waited till we felt like it to do the right thing, if you waited to invest to where the news was nothing but great stories and the economy was looking perfect and everything was awesome, and your favorite political party was in the White House and everything was just lining up, you'd never invest, because that never happens. Mm-hmm. There's always bad news. There's always a reason to be fearful. If you waited to work out until you felt like it, if you waited to go to the gym until you were strong, like, it would never happen. So sometimes we need to act first and just let our feelings catch up, and they will. You start doing the right actions, it's amazing on how your feelings start aligning with your actions. But if you wait for the feelings to come first, a lot of people end up being on the sidelines of their own life.
Yeah. One of the ways that I talk about real estate is in a similar way, that kind of being forced to do something, by making a decision to, create the habit to, write a note to your wife, right? Like, you're building this lane, this stream to be able to continue to do it over time. And, a 401k is kind of an automatic way to be able to invest. You put it on autopilot, don't think about it, et cetera. In real estate, one of the things I talk about is like, hey, somebody has the vision to be able to get into real estate, build a portfolio, financial freedom, all those things. And it's like, you can second guess and analyze all the data all you want, but until you actually get into the game, like, you're going to be on the sidelines. But once you get into the game, it may not be the best deal. It may not be, $1 million deal. It may not make you any money, but by being in the game, you can't get to the next second deal or the third deal without getting into the first one. And by being in the game, it changes the way that you look at all the things in your life, the way you spend money, the way you plan, the way you see things. And it kind of fits in the same way too, because being intentional to where you're trying to go. But the real estate thing, once you're in, like, it's a slow game. It almost, for me personally, at least the way I look at it, it forces me to make certain decisions, because they can't just, do a panic sell,
right?
Just that kind of mindset. But sorry, one more question for you. So kind of going back to the time schedule, you mentioned a couple of weeks on 80 hours a week, and then maybe a couple weeks back, right? And then you have the opportunity to spend money, Amazon or whatever else. Are you seeing any of the people that are on those types of schedules take up maybe a side job or a side business or a side, and trying to be able to use some of that time to be able to increase income?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we do, a lot of folks spend that time traveling. A lot of folks spend that time doing different things, but we have folks that have side businesses, and, they'll come to their 2 weeks off and just be on doing something else. Whether it might be flipping houses, it might be doing some consulting, maybe some seasonal work, but that is pretty common, because it's hard. If you're the type of person who's driven enough to work in that environment 80 hours a week, doing a hard job in a really hard environment, you're probably not wired just to sit at home and do nothing. So sometimes it's just projects. People are constantly doing little projects around their house. Maybe they're buying fixer uppers. We have people that work on old cars. They've always got a car project, but they need something. But some of these folks, to your point, Joel, have a completely separate side business.
That's awesome. Yeah. And like you said before, right? I mean, it's, just putting money away for this future thing. Like, that alone can be a grind. It can, and it can kind of back to Grover, right? Like, if you're grinding and at some point you're going to have nothing because you have just left with dust. If you're not forming and creating and connecting it with what your mission is, you're left with dust. And I just love how you guys are, the group, connecting all these dots and connecting that roadway, that pathway back to the present and making meaning, creating meaning out of it. Yeah.
Well, that's what's so important about having a roadmap, Joel, is because if you're the type of person that's wired to just grind, you're right. You can grind yourself down until the point you're ineffective. But having a plan, a strategy, a blueprint that shows you what you do need to sacrifice to get to where you want to be. So you don't sacrifice too much in the moment. And because we've met with people that have done that they're in their 50s or 60s, maybe they're worth 8, 10, 12 million dollars, but they've sacrificed too much. They have nobody to share it with because they've pushed away every meaningful relationship. Maybe they've sacrificed their health. What having a plan does is allows people to know how much they need to pay to get to where they want to be, but not to pay too much or not to sacrifice health, relationships, those other pillars of living a good life, and to be able to enjoy those things without feeling guilty. To know that, what, I paid my future self this month. I can do some things in the moment to take care of the other areas of my life. So I'm not a multimillionaire in 20 years, but with nothing but bad relationships and bad health to show for it, because that's not living in freedom either.
In terms of 2024, running on 2023, this year is just flown by, seems like. What are some of the projects or goals or things you're working towards for next year?
The first part of the year is going to be mostly devoted to my book, Forging Financial Freedom. We just released it for pre-order. It hit Amazon bestseller the first couple of days, which is super cool. But it'll come out in the spring. So a lot of it will be building the momentum towards that, speaking engagements, those types of things. And then we've actually got some big meetings coming up the next few days to talk about bringing on some new individuals, a couple of really cool partnerships that I'm excited about to scale up the business even more, expand our reach, and to be just more effective. And you mentioned the podcast, and I've been on a lot recently, but that's probably something that we'll do in 2024 as well, as actually have our own, for the reason of staying in front of the people we're already working with, being that source of encouragement, education, and empowerment.
For somebody out there that, maybe thinking about writing a book, any advice? Or
start small, create a discipline of writing. We sometimes we have this idea of a book in our head and it can be overwhelming, and just start breaking it down to small chunks and focus on the inputs. The goal today is not to write a book. The goal is to spend an hour, or maybe it's to write 1,000 words, and they can be crap. Build the habit of writing. Just like we talk about saving. Like, you might not be able to save a lot, but build the habit of saving, build the habit of writing. And then one of the groups that's been phenomenal is a group called Brand Builders Group, to guide me. They've been my coaches through the process, and just been a great encouragement, a great source of focus and feedback. I wish I had started with them sooner.
So from a standpoint of deliverables, is that helping guide you through kind of process for promoting the book or finishing the book? Which part of the process are they helping with?
So, they help with people building their personal brand, but they have a specific, what's the word I'm looking for? They have a specific portion of their business dedicated towards people writing a book. So they can help with formulating your content, clarifying your message, promoting the book, getting you in front of the right people, partnering you with whatever it is that you need. But to be able to break that big project down to small steps and say, okay, who is your audience? Who are you even writing to? That's a big thing for a lot of people. They have this idea of what they want to put out there, but you have to know who you're writing to frame what that message needs to look like. Because if I'm speaking to a bunch of law enforcement professionals, I'm going to be speaking differently than if I'm speaking to oil field professionals. Different still if I'm speaking to a bunch of doctors. Even more so if I'm speaking to my daughter's homeschool class, like it might be the same core message, but the way I frame it is going to be different. So they just help me clarify a lot of those different things. And like I said, they've got a very robust process to help people at any stage. Even for somebody who's already written a book, they're trying to figure out, how do I actually get people to read it? How do I put it in people's hands? They can help with that too. But for me, it was to have this big project broken down to small parts. Like you're trying to figure out how to eat an elephant some days. And they're like, okay, we're gonna cut this down into bite-sized chunks for you.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Any other last words of advice for somebody out there looking to build wealth, looking to kind of get into entrepreneurship, looking to save money?
I think just going back to what I mentioned earlier, Joel, it's about agency. Focus on what you can control, not what you can't control. Because too often we're focused on the things that happen in life that we have no influence over. And that attention and that focus on those things, it distracts us from putting our effort and energy into the things that we can't control.
Well, thank you so much for making time for us today. Can't wait to check out the book. So you said spring, April, May?
It's available for pre-order now, but it'll be released in the spring.
Okay.
In
Can't wait
April.
to check it out. And keep following you on social media, and we'll have to check back in very soon. But thanks again, Chad. Talk soon.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Like Jocko Willink and
Seriously? You had Jocko Willink there?
No, it's all simulcast. So
okay.
The last year it was, I think, in Minneapolis, or anyways, it was somewhere in the lower 48. But then we created an event around it. So it was like Jocko Willink's been on there, Dave Ramsey, Simon Sinek, Craig Rochelle, Pat Lencioni. So they're all on this stage, but then we have a simulcast where we broadcast and we have business groups come together. So that's kind of more what we've done, just because it is the logistics of getting those people up here is ridiculous. I mean, they're expensive anyway, but then we also have a small population. So that's more what we've done up here. So I go out of state for a lot of that stuff. A lot of the conferences, it's just too difficult to get something going up here. So
yeah, I mean, the reason I bring it up is like you mentioned, this stuff is hard. Like, okay, I got a mission, I got a goal, saving money, working hard, sometimes bringing people together to share that camaraderie too. I can see how that could be beneficial with everybody. But anyway, I don't want to keep you, but yeah, I could be talking about this stuff all day. But
so one conference, where are you based out of? I can't remember.
I'm in St. Louis, Missouri.
You're in St. Louis. So one of the conferences I go to every single year that I think you would really connect with is EntreLeadership. It's a business conference that Dave Ramsey's team puts on, but it's not like a budgeting thing. It's about growing your business, about growing your influence. And they have some phenomenal people. Actually, I met Jocko there a couple of years ago. Dude's larger than life. Yeah. It's like his hand, like everything about him, like, oh my gosh, you weren't kidding. Anyway, but
good.
They have, good. They have just amazing content every single year. It's not cheap, but I mean, you get one idea out of something like that, it makes the whole thing worth it. So EntreLeadership is going to be in Dallas. They move it. It's going to be in Dallas in 2024, but that's been a game changer for me. So
Entre, E-N-T, how do you spell it?
Yeah, it's just here. I'll just EntreLeadership. So they just like entrepreneur, squashed it with leadership. So
okay, cool.
But Joel, I do have to run. I've got another appointment that
Cool.
I'm late for.
Thank
How
you.
soon do you think this will air?
It could be within a month, maybe sooner.
Okay.
But
Yeah, just give me a heads up.
I'll let you know. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
Take
Bye.
care.